Welcome back to Honest News. Well, if you're watching the news at all today, you've seen that there's a breaking story that New York Times now has done an investigation that Donald Trump has been involved in tax fraud for years now. And he was saying that all his wealth is his own wealth except $1 million. His dad gave to him, and he had to pay that back with interest. But the truth is coming out that he actually received hundreds of millions of dollars through loopholes and through basically tax evasion, fraud. And so, you know, that's a dirty little secret. Maybe not a little secret, but that's dirty, right? Well, how about something that goes even dirtier than that? And that is his great-grandmother. His dad's mother is, well, I guess that would be his grandmother, right? Yeah, his grandmother. Elizabeth Christ. Can you imagine? Her last name being Christ, and last name Trump because she married Frederick Trump. But what is not being told by Donald Trump is that it was Elizabeth Christ Trump that started the Trump organization. And when she died, she is the one that left the wealth to Donald Trump's dad, because she went into business with Donald Trump's dad. So the wealth really began with his grandmother. It didn't begin with his dad. It began with his dad's mom and her husband. But when he passed away, she, at that time, back in the 1800s, I guess it would be, you know, a woman being in business wasn't easy. So she went into business with her son, Donald Trump's dad. And that's where the wealth came from. That's where the wealth came from. But isn't it interesting that her last name was Christ? By the way, his grandmother is of a German descent. Isn't that interesting? German. So let's read a little bit of this. It says, Elizabeth Christ Trump, born Elizabeth Christ, October 10th, 1880, June 6th, 1966. Isn't that interesting? Those are all sixes. Isn't that something? June, the 6th month, the 6th day. Look how many sixes are in there. That's kind of weird. Anyway, she was born German, American businesswoman, and is considered the matriarch of the Trump family. She married Frederick Trump in 1902. While raising their 3 children, the early death of her husband in 1918 required the 37-year-old widow to manage their properties. She founded the real estate development company Elizabeth Trump and Son with her son Fred, which would be Donald Trump's dad. The company, now known as the Trump Organization, is currently owned by her grandson, Donald Trump. Let's read a little bit more about this. Pretty interesting. The 45th President of the United States. Let's look at the early life here. Elizabeth Trump was born as Elizabeth Christ in Calidus, Kingdom of Bavaria, the daughter of Philip Christ by his wife Anna Maria Christ. While the family owned a little vineyard, the income from that was not adequate to meet their needs. And Philip Philip Christ worked as a tinker, repairing and polishing old utensils and selling pots and pans. He ran his trade from his house, which was just across the street from the home of the Trump family, where Katharina Trump, an early widow, lived with her 6 children. And I'm not going to read all of this, but I find it very interesting, very interesting how the Trump organization really got started. You don't hear Donald Trump ever giving credit to his grandmother. Isn't that something? Never gives credit to his grandmother. Elizabeth had a remarkable talent for keeping the real estate business going. She hired a contractor to build houses on an empty piece of property left by her husband, sold the houses, and lived off the mortgages paid by the new owners. Her vision was to have her 3 children continue the family business when they finished school. But Fred wanted to start earlier, so she founded the company Elizabeth Trump and Son. Since Fred was still a minor, she had to sign all legal documents on his behalf and perform the real estate closings. In 1927, when Fred was 22, Elizabeth Trump and Son was formally incorporated. Fred became quite successful with the business, but Elizabeth remained involved throughout her life. Even in her 70s, she would collect coins from the laundromats in Trump buildings. Very interesting information here. Makes you wonder, though, why didn't Donald Trump ever give credit? Why doesn't he ever give credit to his grandmother? And you don't see even his dad giving credit to the grandmother. And I often wonder, is it possible that she was really a godly woman? If you look at her in this picture, now this could just be because back then that's the way they were modest, but there seems to be a real modesty here. And I'm wondering if possibly that they don't want to associate themselves with their grandmother, and because possibly she was a godly woman. That's just a thought. I mean, I'm not saying that's what happened, but so this is Donald Trump's dad's dad. Okay, so this is Donald Trump's grandfather, and this is Donald Trump's grandmother. This was back in about 1918. Okay, so I think it's rather interesting how that there's never a mention of where the business really got started. I mean, it was his grandmother that gave the name to the corporation to make it a company incorporated. So, you know, I almost feel like why is Donald Trump taking all the credit? Not to mention what's coming out in the news now. Folks, this just really shows you who he is. This shows you his character. You think he really is out to help other people when he himself won't even give credit to his own? Won't even give credit to his own. I've never heard Donald Trump ever talk about his grandmother. And all this talk about women liberation and talking about how he even says women are stronger than men in business. You don't hear a word about his grandmother. Not a single word. And I just find that really, really, really strange. Remarkable even. So there you have a little bit of information there. I don't know how, I don't know how accurate this is because this is Wikipedia, but it's all we've got to work with, But I really think it's interesting that her last name was Christ. That's just really interesting. And then again, the date when she was born. That's really weird too, all those 6s. Really strange. So, We don't know a whole lot about Donald Trump because he tries to keep everything he can secret, including his tax returns or his taxes. He keeps that all secret. But somebody was able to do some research and some investigation at New York Times, and they were able to obtain quite a bit of information, and now you're seeing it rolling out. It's on CNN, it's all on the major networks. Of course, I'm sure Fox News is not going to report on it because of the double standard. But, I just find this so remarkable that nobody wants to give credit where credit's due. And I also find it interesting that his grandmother came from a German empire. Isn't that something? A German empire. And I'm sorry, she wasn't born on June 6, 1966. She died. That's even more weird. That's even more weird. She died on June 6th, 1966, at the age of 85. That is really strange, that date. All those sixes. Just very strange to me. I don't know why I was thinking that's when she was born, but no, that wouldn't even make sense, 1966, being that old. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed seeing a little bit of the history of your president and understanding that who he is, understanding who he is, where he really comes from, and help you to see that the Trump organization didn't get started with Donald Trump. It got started with his grandmother. Yeah. So it was really his grandmother that is due all the credit. She's the one that built the name. She's the one that built the company. And, someone that's proud and boastful like Donald Trump, he doesn't even want to give credit to his own dad in public. Did you know that? He barely gives any credit to his dad because he says, yeah, my dad gave me $1 million loan. No, he didn't give him $1 million loan. He gave him so much money that Donald Trump was a millionaire by the time he was 7 years old. Did you hear what I said? He was already a millionaire by the time he was 7 years old. So it's all coming out now. And if Donald Trump's not going to be candid and be transparent and straightforward in his business dealings and his taxes, what makes you think he's going to be honest with you? And what makes you think he's going to level with the American people? I can clearly see why the Lord told me he's a snake in the grass. Usually snakes are pretty bad, but a snake in the grass means it's a snake. This snake is hiding. He's hiding. What else is he hiding? What else is he hiding?